My name is Brandon Hartung, and I'm a media missionary who travels the world using photography and video to tell the stories of impact those missionaries and ministries are having and inviting others to join in those efforts. Today's episode is sponsored by Gospel Lighthouse Church in Blytheville, Arkansas. Services are every Sunday and Wednesday. You can join a service in person or online on YouTube, Facebook, or check out myglc.org. Gospel Lighthouse Church. People are our greatest investment. Today's podcast was recorded live from Madison, Florida. I sit down with missionary Charles Matlock, who, with his wife, were missionaries for several years in the Amazon jungles of Peru, and are now planting a church in Madison. He tells some amazing stories of trusting God in the unknown, as well as heartbreaking stories from working with the orphan and human trafficking crisis there. Now let's head off to Madison and meet Charles. All right, so we are here in Madison, Florida.
Yay, Madison.
And we are here with former missionary. I guess you're always a missionary, though, in your heart, right?
I am. I am a missionary. I cannot separate being a pastor shepherd from being a missionary.
Yeah.
Plus, I am a missionary church planter with the North American Mission Board.
Nice.
So I am.
So you are. So
I am
still a missionary.
I'm still a missionary.
Very good.
And it's been amazing how God has used each step in my journey to prepare me for the next step. It's been a great ride.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about some of that. Yeah, So this is Charles Matlock, in case you don't know him already. Well, that's great. So you are a missionary in Peru.
I was.
Several years, and then obviously you're now here planting a church in Madison, and got to come down and see your church and meet some of your people, and do some video work for you. And
it's been a great weekend.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's been fun.
And now we get to do a podcast, so let people know more about what you guys, your history, and just you love a mission. That's what this podcast is all about, just cool things that have happened on the mission field and
absolutely
stuff like that. So let's just start kind of at the beginning. Like, where did you find out you had a love for missions? Like, what sparked that fire?
Great question. I knew from an early age that God was calling me to a gospel ministry. When I was probably, 5 years old, I would take the pots and pans out from underneath my mom's cabinets, and I would set them up in the kitchen on the floor. And I would take this cabinet door and I'd pull it this way, and this cabinet door and pull it this way, and I'd preach the gospel to the pots and pans.
Wow.
I made me a little pulpit.
Wow.
And of course,
some of them get saved.
Some of them got saved. I think Mom still has one of those pans today.
They're all pretty hard-headed.
They are hard-headed, yes. But that just began me on a journey. Of course, that journey had to go way far out of the way before I started getting back on track where I needed to be. But I started out just being a willing worker in the church. I was just serving wherever there was a need. And I started serving in the RAs and volunteering in the youth department. And then the pastor asked me one time if I would do the mission moments in the service. And I'll never forget my first one. I was so nervous. Shaking nervous. And so I did that, and I just loved it. I love the idea of missions, the heart of missions. I realized that I'm a Christian because a missionary shared the gospel.
Yeah.
And that just keeps moving forward because we're all missionaries.
Yeah.
And so that got me started. I organized a trip, and we had it set to go to Mexico.
Have you ever been on one before?
This was my very first mission trip.
And you were leading it.
And I was leading it without any experience. And we were going to Mexico. And I didn't know any Spanish at all. And it just happened that I got married on Saturday, and we woke up on the mission field on Monday.
Wow.
And we were so deep into Mexico. We were 7 blocks into Mexico.
Wow.
And in some towns that's really deep.
Yeah.
But we were working at a little church that when people would be deported back into Mexico, Mexico didn't have anything for the children. And so the children would just be turned out on the streets while mom and dad were still being processed.
Wow.
And this local church took those kids in, housed them, fed them, taught them the Bible. And so we went down to work with them. And I remember one day I was sitting there with the kids, and they asked me something, and in my very best Spanish that I could work up, I said, "No, yo no hablo español. No hablo inglés." And they started laughing. And they're like, "You don't speak English? We speak English." And that was all they could speak.
Yeah.
In English was telling me they spoke English.
Just enough. Yeah. Just enough to make fun of you.
Just, yes. At least they didn't mess theirs up like I messed mine.
Yeah. Well, that's cool that, too, something you said about, you kind of went on this long roundabout path to get to it, and a lot of people think like, wow, I'm too old to do this or too old to start something new, or
right.
Not saying you're old, but,
Yeah, well,
I mean,
if the gray fit.
Yeah. Well, even me, like, I don't feel like I'm old, but
right.
You're starting to eventually get to an age where you start going, well, I'm a little too old to start something new, or
right.
I need to kind of keep doing this thing. So, like, what was that like? Did you have any like kind of battles with that, starting something later?
No, not really. I mean, I understand. Yeah, I can see where some people may think that. I was called into the ministry late in life, or I should say, I responded to the call of ministry late in life. I was in my 40s, and I was sitting in a football stand watching a Friday night football game. My wife worked for the school, and she was in her office catching up on some work she needed to do, and I'm sitting there, and I heard this voice, as clear as I'm talking to you, just say, "I want you in the ministry." And I stopped and I looked, and I didn't recognize anybody around me, and nobody was talking to me. And so I went back to watching the game, and then again I heard, "I want you in the ministry full time." And I know that no one around me heard that voice. I know nobody did. I heard it, and everybody around me heard my conversation with God after that. Wow. And I just started talking to God, and I was giving him excuse after excuse. I've got a family. I don't have an education. I have to go to seminary. I can't go to seminary because I have a family. I've got to work. I need to support. And God had other plans.
Yeah.
And so I went to church on Sunday and shared with my pastor what I experienced, and he said, "Well, let's walk through this together." And so wasn't long, he came to me and he said, "Hey," he goes, "we need a youth pastor. How about applying for it?" And I said, "Okay," because I know God's calling me, so I'll apply for it.
So you're open to anything, just whatever the need was.
Whatever the need was. Up until that point, I was still a constant, willing servant, and my wife and I, we were serving in children's ministry. We were leading a divorce care group. My wife and I had led divorce care for about 12 years, and so we're just going to do whatever. And so I filled out an application. I wrote a resume and I handed it in, turned it in. And And so one Sunday, one of the elders came to me and he said, "Charlie, I don't mean to discourage you in any way, but there's somebody else that we want. We're gonna go in a different direction." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll just keep looking."
Yeah.
And I was like, I am a little disappointed because I would like to work at my church, but I'll keep putting my application out there. And but I just kept doing what I do. I kept serving. And that summer I was because we didn't have a youth pastor, I just stayed with the youth, worked with the youth, went to camp with them, did everything that you should be doing with them. And at the end of that summer, that same elder came back to me and he goes, "Charlie," he goes, "we were wrong. God's made it clear to us that you are the guy we need to be talking to." And so September 1 of 2010, I was my official hire date into full-time ministry.
Wow.
And it's just been a great ride.
And it's crazy because it's hard. I mean, it's hard to fight the flesh and not be like offended, or some people would, it'd be like, "Well, I'm not doing anything then, you don't want me."
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to fight that, but just staying open to wherever God puts you. That's a good mindset and heart set to be at. But
yeah, well, one of the things I took away from divorce care is what probably helped me through that the most. And one of the things that we would teach our participants in divorce care is the best way to find healing and get past hurt is to serve others. And don't focus on yourself, but serve others, and you'll find healing.
Yeah.
And that's just what I did.
Yeah. That's great.
So I was on staff at that church for 7 years. I wore many different hats, and it's where I learned to preach and learned so much about leadership in that church. And in 2012, my dad, he had passed away, and 2 weeks after his funeral, I went to Peru for the first time. And so I was excited about that trip. I'd been telling him about it, building up to that point, and when I got to Peru, it was an amazing time, just amazing. And it was my first real international trip, even though I'd been to Spain, and I got a funny story about that.
7 blocks into Mexico.
It's 7 blocks into Mexico. I've been to Spain. Now I find myself in Peru, and I remember when we were packing to go home for that trip, I remember just praying and saying, "God, if you ever give me an opportunity to come back to Peru, I'm going to jump on it. I won't hesitate." And so 2 years later, 2014, he gave me an opportunity to go back to Peru and actually go into the lower Amazon jungle.
Wow.
And when I got off the airplane and I'm walking across the tarmac, I had an overwhelming sense, and I don't know how else to explain it, that I was home.
Wow.
And that this was going to be my home. And so my first response was, "Okay, God, but I got a wife at home that you need to tell."
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to tell her that. But Christian and I, when we got married and we did our vows, one of the things that we did was we said to God that we wanted to dedicate our married life to his service, that we would go anywhere, do anything, anytime that he wanted us to go. We would not hesitate in that go. And so when I got home from that trip, I really didn't want to come home. I wanted to stay. I just wanted to call my wife and say, "Hey, come on to Peru." But so I got home and I just told her. And 6 months later, we went back on a mission trip, and Christian got to go, and she went going saying, God, I'm not going to love these people because he wants me to. I'm not going to love this place because he wants me to. You have to put that love in my heart. And so our last day, she's on a moto taxi, and she's just having a conversation with God and giving God all the excuses why she couldn't move to Peru.
Yeah.
And I wish she was here to tell it, that she just let go of the guy that she was riding on the back of the bike. She just held her arms out like this. And if you've ever ridden a motorcycle in a third world country, you know you don't let go.
Yeah.
And she just let go, and she goes, I'm yours.
Wow.
And a year later, we moved to the lower Amazon jungle.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's an interesting journey as well. We prayed. Well, let me back up. I contacted our main church. We were part of a church plant, and by this time it was already like we came into it about a year into the church plant when we started attending there, and then I was on staff for 7 years there. But the are sending our mother church. They said, we only send missionaries to gateway cities. We focus on Muslim. And so that was a little heartbreaking that our church wouldn't sponsor us. Our mother church wouldn't sponsor us. And but they gave us a phone number to Commission to Every Nation out of Kerrville. And so I called and talked to the man there, and he said, he goes, I hear in your voice, I can tell by our conversation that God's calling you to Peru.
Wow.
But he goes, I need to know some things before I'll commit to bringing you on board as one of our missionaries. When is God calling you to be on the ground? Is he really calling you to Peru? And what are you going to do? And so my wife and I talked about it, and we decided to pray. We prayed for a year separately. We prayed and just asked God those 3 questions. And we decided that we weren't going to share with each other what God revealed to us until we went down on a scouting trip. We were going down for 2 weeks to just pray and fast on the mission field. God, are you really calling us here? When do you want us here? And what are we to do? And so we get down there, and she gets sick. That happens sometimes.
Yeah. You're like, okay, yeah.
But it was all good. But we decided to say, okay, here's the date that I feel God's calling us to be here. And I said the 1st of August, first week of August,
Which is how much further from that time?
Oh, it's still a good ways away.
Okay.
It was still a good ways away. And then she said, that's so funny because the date that God gave me is August 1st.
Wow.
And so with that confirmation, we knew God was calling us to Peru. And we knew when he wanted us to be on the ground. And so we started just really praying and seeking what our mission was going to be there in Peru. And so I went out one day with my on a prayer walk while she was in the hotel room, and I was just praying and walking, and I had an address come into my head, and 1 Peter 2:21. And I'm like, God, I don't know what that says. I don't have my Bible with me, and I didn't bring my phone. And so I'm like, I'll have to wait until I get back to the hotel room to look it up. And so that address just kept ringing in my head over and over and over as we made this as I'm prayer walking and stuff. And I get back to the hotel room, and I tell Christian, I said, I think God gave me the verse that He's calling us to Peru on. And so I'm excited. I grab my Bible. I flip through 1 Peter 2:21. For you are called to do good, even if it means suffering, just like Christ suffered for you. He is your example, and you must follow in His footsteps. And I was like,
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
yes. And so didn't tell us what we were doing. But we had met some missionaries on that trip that were had a hope home for teenage girls that had been rescued from the sex trade. And you know, I've been a youth pastor for all these years prior, and so my wife works at the high school, so youth, it just seemed to be matching everything up. And so we agreed to come back and serve alongside of them in that ministry. And things changed while we were gone, and they didn't tell us that things changed. And they went from having teen girls to children. We had the youngest one in our home was 18 months.
Wow.
And so we are working with children that is
Kind of like a safe home type situation.
Yeah. It's in Peru they call them Casa Hogar, which is house home, and you can call it a hope home or a rescue home or whatever. But it was a place where the children would come in to social services, and then they would bring them out to us, or actually we go pick them up. And so we're working with those kids, and that was the hardest, darkest ministry we've ever experienced. It was so rewarding all at the same time. And I mean, we saw God working in these kids' lives. But the other couple, they were from Canada. They left that organization, and they actually went out in the jungle in another place and started another home. And so my wife and I were there. In the first 14 months on the field, I didn't have a day off.
Wow.
And stress was killing me. And because we lived on site, we lived way out in the jungle. We had a 14-foot wall around the place to keep predators out, and not wildlife predators, human predators. And we had 6-year-old to 9-year-old little girls that were prostitutes. We had an 18-month-old boy that had been sodomized. Every time a new child would come into the home, they brought a whole new wave of spiritual warfare. When we had some things we thought were settled and we were working really well with this child, and a new child would come in, they would flare up. It was just a constant state of spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
And we had one little girl I'll never forget. She was so precious, and she was the younger of a sibling pair, and she was so loving, and had such a great smile on her face. But when those demons were active, she was terrible to work with. She would bite you. She would headbutt you. She'd scream, kick. And one night, I was in my room, and Christian was up there working with her, and the little girl just wailing and wailing. And so I didn't know at the time, but she was underneath the bed crying, and Christian was trying to get her out. And so when she finally got her out from underneath the bed, she's just holding her, trying to talk with her and stuff. And she's just headbutting her, and she's biting her, and she's hitting her, and she's pulling her hair. And I just started praying for the blood of Jesus to be over this little girl. And Christian was praying the same thing. And I don't know how long this went on, but it was a long time. And then all of a sudden, it just got quiet. And the kids called Christian Moppy. And this little girl, she just got quiet. And Christian said that she took her hands and put on her face and looked at her and said, "Moppy, I love you."
Wow.
You can't beat that.
Yeah.
You know, that was a supernatural movement of God working in that little girl's life. And we didn't have any problems with her after that.
Wow.
She was fine after that.
Good.
Yeah. But there was so much joy with those kids. They would come in filthy, dirty, clothes on their back, if they had clothes on their back, and they would be kids again. After just a short time. Now those demons would keep coming back.
Yeah.
But they would play and laugh and everything. And so there's just tons of those fun memories. We had one little couple, this one little girl, she stole my heart. She had a gang insignia carved into her chest. And they were living on the street, just her and her little brother. And she's 5 years old, and she's fending for her brother. She's scavenging through and finding little snails to feed him. And it took us a while to get her to understand that she didn't have to search for the snails along the sidewalks.
Yeah.
There was food available. She could eat. She didn't have to do that. And she was just a joy to be with.
Yeah. What was it like living? What were your kind of living conditions and compared to America?
Yes.
Did you have electricity in the village?
We had, so we lived between two villages. The road that we lived on was called Carretera de Infierno, the road from hell.
Oh,
and
it's lovely.
It is. And that was what I entitled my newsletter.
Yeah.
But
probably some nights after dealing with kids all day.
Yes. And
just the physical road.
And so we had the village of Chonta and the village of Infierno, and we lived between them. And our small kids went to school in Chonta. Our older kids went to school in Infierno. But so we're out in the middle of the jungle. We're on 80 hectares of land on the Tambopata River. We have a lot of riverfront property. We're raising cacao, which is chocolate, and the pods, we did that to help fund the ministry. And so we had screen wire in our holes in the wall, some people call them windows. But
the air flow in and out.
Just let the air flow in and out, and no glass whatsoever. We did have electric when it was working, and we had running water. It was as brown as coffee.
Yeah, you showed me a picture. Yeah. I would not. Water is is a word for it.
Yes, it is, and Wow. And we had a 5-gallon bucket for a toilet. And beside the 5-gallon bucket was another 5-gallon bucket with acetylene, which is sawdust. And so you would do your business in the bucket, and then you would sprinkle some sawdust over your business when you're done. And when the bucket got full, that was my job to empty buckets. And, we'd have, anywhere from 13 to 20 kids, and I'm emptying buckets. And it's not as bad as you think.
Yeah.
It really isn't as bad as you think.
It's bad in my mind.
And until the first time it splashes back on you. And then you make a beeline to that muddy water. But there was one night, this is so funny, that Christian had just gotten out of the shower, and she took a cotton ball, put some alcohol on it, and she was rubbing the mosquito bites that she had, and she looked at the cotton ball, and she's like, "Look at this, look how dirty I am. I just took a shower." And I looked at her and I said, "Honey, we bathe in dirty water."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh, is that why I'm so tan?"
Yeah. Thought you were just getting a suntan.
Yeah. But we had another little girl that came into our home, two sisters, and one of them, the older, she was just a couple of weeks away from turning 10 years old, and she had been a prostitute for 3 years.
Oh my goodness.
And so she did not talk. She didn't ask the women in the house for anything, because it was my wife, and we had a couple of Peruvian women that lived there as well. And but she would come to me, and she would ask me for agua, and she would lift her shirt up and expose herself. And anytime she was hungry or thirsty, she would expose herself and ask for.
That's how she got what she
understood
wanted.
That if she understood, first of all, you go to the male to get what you want, and then you have to give him.
You pay, yeah.
You have to barter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she was beginning to develop. And so the first thing my wife and I did was we went to town and bought her some training bras, and told her she had to wear those. and we just, my wife and the other ladies and I worked with her and finally got her to the point to understand that she has a cup in the kitchen, and there's water on the counter, and there's water in the fridge, and it's free to get anytime she wanted. She didn't have to ask, just go get it. If she wanted a snack, we always had fresh fruit on the counter. We lived in the jungle.
Yeah.
Okay. We had fresh bananas hanging on the porch. They were there to eat anytime you wanted. And so it took a little while for us to do that. And before she left our home, Christian was able to lead her to the Lord.
That's awesome.
And there's where the joy comes. I mean, we had tons of laughter in the home. It was always something. And
but you're there for a bigger purpose than just laughter.
Just laughter,
yeah.
Yes. And there was one girl. She was 15, I think. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a healthy young man, and she would come up to me and she'd go, "Tu gordo," and I'd say, "Tu fero." "Un diez, yo flaquito, tu fero." So what I would tell her, she'd say, "You're fat," and I would say, "You're ugly."
Oh.
And I go, but one day I'm going to be skinny and you're still going to be ugly. And she would laugh. There was just a little game that she liked to play with me, and it was fun.
Kids are mean all over the world.
Absolutely. So,
yeah, I was in Iraq with some missionaries, and they work with kids and stuff, and you go to play sports with them and stuff, and they just trash talk you, and you're like, hurt my feelings.
yeah.
Like when the translator doesn't translate it anymore, you're like, oh, that must be bad.
Yeah. I wouldn't play soccer with anybody over 8 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to be under 8. I'll play soccer with you.
Right. They get too fast and they talk too much smack after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So it's been a journey. God has taken us all over the place.
Yeah.
And the best thing of our journey has been the people and the relationships that we were able to meet and to develop. And well, you and I, we've traveled.
Yeah.
We met through Cross Church, and we got to go to Malawi, Africa together, and that was fun.
That was a great trip.
That was a great trip.
Yeah. I don't remember where we were. I think we were out to a village to show the Jesus film.
Yes. Yeah.
We were walking between kind of the house villages, or kind of just a bunch of houses and huts in the area. And so you're kind of just visiting different ones. They're planning a church over here. And we were just walking along, and like, there's no PlayStation or TV or anything for these kids to do. So if you see a couple white Americans walking through,
yeah, I mean,
it's an attraction almost.
We were definitely an attraction.
Yeah. And so we were just walking along this road, and probably 100, no kidding, 100 kids just started walking with us, and we're just like, whoa, this is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'll never forget that little boy in the village where we showed the Jesus film. And he was, I don't know, he was probably 10 years old, and he was just as happy as he could be, and he looked like he might have had his dad's shirt on, and because it had just swallowed him up, and he had a grasshopper about that big, and he had a string tied on it, and he had the string tied around his finger, and he would take that grasshopper and throw it up in the air, and it would fly, and he would run with it until it landed, and then he would pull it up and do it again. He would just laugh, and I thought, wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, like a live balloon or something. You can fly, walk with a grasshopper on a string. It's his pet grasshopper.
Yeah, it was amazing. But
that's cool. This thing you see in places like that, in Malawi, even especially, is one of the poorest countries in the world year after year, and just how creative the kids get.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have any other options. You know, it's a stick and a wheel, and you see those kind of things. You know, you push the wheel.
You see a lot of that.
Yeah. And then some of them get really good, like the little bottle cap. They put a bunch of bottle caps and make little cars and stuff out of them. And you're like, wow, that's amazing.
I remember one time, the trip that I was in Malawi before I went with you. You know, we've got our water bottles, and we drink them and we discard them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this one little boy, he was running around gathering up all of our water bottles that we were emptying, and he was taking his shirt, and he would put the water bottle here and then screw the lid on top of it.
Oh,
so it would stay, so he could carry multiple water bottles.
Wow.
And he could get more water bottles that way. And
yeah.
Thought, well, that's pretty smart.
Yeah. And they must love them and use them for stuff, because even on the van, sometimes like kids would come alongside and say, bottle. Like they want you to throw in your bottles, because like, we'll use them.
I'll use them. Yeah. Yeah. So when you come back from a third world nation or a developing nation, you realize how much we waste.
Yeah.
It is sad how much we waste, but But traveling all around, I want to share this with everyone. In 2010, when I got to go to Spain, I got to see how big the body of Christ is. For the first time, the body of Christ became real to me in a way that just blew my mind, because I grew up in the church. I was 8 days old when Mom and Dad put me in the nursery for the very first time. And so I grew up. I know about the Lord's Supper. I know about the body of Christ. I know why we take the Lord's Supper, and I find myself sitting in a church on the Mediterranean coast. And one of the things that was just really that stood out to me was that within my lifetime, back in 1975, it was still illegal to be a professing Christian in Spain.
Wow.
You could go to jail for doing what we were doing. And so we're sitting there with the doors wide open on this church. The windows were open. Man, we are singing like nobody's business, and I can't understand a word that they're singing, but it was beautiful. And we get to the point in the service where they brought the bread and the wine out, and I knew what that was. And they began to talk and to pray, and they broke the bread and they passed it, and I knew what to do, and I knew what it meant, and I'm doing it with brothers and sisters that I had just met
On the other side of the world, speaking a different language,
didn't understand them, and I'm doing the Lord's Supper with them, and it was that moment that God just opened my eyes to the vastness of the body of Christ.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter where you are in the world, we do the same things as Christians.
Yeah.
We baptize. Oh my goodness. Baptism. I love baptism. Baptism Sundays are my favorite Sunday. Love them, love them, love them. I have had the honor to baptize on 3 continents.
Nice.
And I've baptized in a contributory to the Amazon, which was that water was cold, but it was good. But I've baptized in rivers. In Africa, I've baptized both trips that I was there the first time. It was in some murky water.
I was going to say, it's a lot different than the Baptist tubs in America.
Yeah.
Some interesting
Yeah.
situations.
Yes. And
And just dig holes in the ground.
Yeah.
Literally take buckets from the river or whatever and just fill. Get everybody in there and dunk in the muddy water. And
Yep.
get out.
And I loved that first baptism experience in Malawi, because we walked probably 3 miles from the church to a dried up river.
Ugh.
And there was just a section of stagnant water. And
If you've ever smelled stagnant water,
yes,
it's interesting.
it is
Ever
ever
been tempted to get in it?
yeah. and the men had broken off branches of a tree, and they were in the water, and the women had lined the edges, and they were singing hymns, and the men were sweeping the water to the rhythm of the hymn, and they were moving all of that scum off the top of that water, and it was just a beautiful sight.
Yeah.
And we got in, and I think we baptized 28 that day.
Wow.
And so when we were ready to leave the water, come up out of the water, all the baptisms were done. They told us, no, you stay right there. And so, in the back of your mind, you're going, is there an alligator?
Yeah. And maybe in quicksand.
Why am I not moving?
Yeah.
But they began to sing hymns, and it was so beautiful, because to them it was part of worship.
Yeah.
It was so moving. And so for me, coming back to the States, I have a whole new outlook on what does it mean to get in that pool back there. I've been part of churches, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but I've been part of churches that it just felt like it was tagged on to the service. Either it was pushed in the first, or after everything was done, oh, stick around, we have baptisms.
Yeah.
And so for me, baptism is part of the worship experience, and that really opened my eyes. So God has used missions to really open my eyes and my heart to things that we do in the local church here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's cool. Some of my favorite services ever as well are just not even in a building, but the church meeting in a shade of a tree out in a field somewhere. You're like, what in the world? This is crazy.
Yeah.
I was in a country one time, and this is one of the times that I knew, like, man, I knew I wanted to do missions anyway, but it's just one of those, like, reiterate, like, you just have those moments that are like, oh man, this is definitely what I need to be doing. But we were in I won't say the country or whatever, but a village that was full of people that were not friendly to Christians.
Right.
And this church had this land out in the middle of this field. And so it's like, you got to go out, and they had a little building on the edge of not even the property. It was like back toward the road. And so it's just where they stored the little seats and the pews and stuff.
Right.
They literally had some pews like we have in your church here.
Mm-hmm.
They probably weren't as long, but they were,
Right.
legit pews,
Right.
wood pews. And so they would go to this building on the side of the road, and then they would all, like, everybody grab your own seat, or you'd get with two other people, and you would walk your pew across these fields. And you're like walking past, baobab trees and
Right.
and just the sun's out there, and you're seeing these wildlife, and you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
this is crazy, but so cool at the same time, like what they're willing to do to be able to meet and have service. And then of course, you wrap it up and you're like, hey, we got to walk all this stuff back now.
Yeah.
And get out of here before dark, because it's not really very safe for y'all to be here. But it's just those cool moments. You're just walking and the sun's setting, and you're seeing these people playing soccer in the field over here and just enjoying life. It's just really cool. Those little God winks, I think.
Oh yes, they are. There are so many of them. It's like on our way walking that day, we walked 3 miles to the water to do those baptisms. I was just in awe of the walk. Just being part of that walk. I wasn't even thinking about what we were going to do yet.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those moments that just stirs your soul.
Yeah. Like, oh, Brandon's crying because he's walking 3 miles through Africa.
Yeah. It's hot.
Oh, he's really being affected by it. Yeah.
Yeah. But
3 miles. It's hot.
Yeah. But it's the Holy Spirit moving within us, and it's beautiful. And for me to be to be on mission, I'm on mission all the time. I'm constantly thinking missional.
Yeah.
Even here in the local context of being here in Madison, Florida, what can I do as a missionary?
Yeah.
And
which is how we should all be thinking. That's something I always tell people too, is like, you're on mission even here. It's easier sometimes when you go to another country because you're pulled out of your routine and
Right.
out of your everyday.
Yeah, and you feel like you got to do it because I paid a lot of money to get straight, man. I want to see.
But just breaking out of the routine and all that stuff. So it's like, that's something I always encourage people to do, is find the moments in everyday life. And something like we did yesterday, just going around town and whatever you're doing, you know, it could either make people have a conversation with you or we were filming, so it was easy. Like people, oh, what are you guys filming? Oh, well, actually, you know,
this is why.
Yeah. So it's just like real, you know, and you ride motorcycles.
Right.
So like that's an instant moment of contact with people. They're like, oh, oh, I love your motorcycle. You know, just these moments you just got to be thinking on purpose.
Yeah.
How am I living my life, and how can I talk to people and
God
live
gives
with a purpose?
us opportunities.
Yes.
Constantly. But do we see them?
Yeah, so many people are on cruise control to just get through the next thing they're doing on their own to-do list.
Right. Yeah. And so, you know, I'll never be ashamed of the gospel. I'll never be ashamed of being able to share my faith with someone. And just to be able to, you know, you said I ride motorcycles. You know, you pull up to a gas station on a Harley that has straight pipes and they're loud, people are going to look at you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then almost a guarantee every time somebody is going to say, nice bike.
Yeah.
For me, open door.
Yep.
It's an open door. You said something to me. There it is. We're going to talk.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, I like to talk.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. So
most preachers do, to be honest.
Yeah, they do. We like to talk.
Yeah, I love too, and just the approach and part of the reason with you guys launching a church here in Madison, you know, is that same concept of, like you said when we started this podcast, is it's impossible to separate that because that is mission.
It is.
I mean, that's thinking like a missional church. There's a lot of churches, sadly, that it's let's show up and check a box and we did it and look at us. Let's give ourselves a hug and a pat on the back and all right, see you next Sunday, and you're on cruise control for the rest of your life. Like that, life's too short. And
it's way too short. You know, one of the things that I've been told in church planting is that you know, to have that missionary mindset up front is great. You got to have the entrepreneur spirit, but then there's going to be a shift where I have to shift out of that. And when I hear that, it makes me think back to when I was first going on the mission field, and I was, you know, I was on staff at a church. I was the family pastor. I led the youth ministry. I was in the preaching rotation. I was the maintenance man. You know, I did
jack of all trades.
Yeah, I did all of these different things in the church, and a lady told me one time at a conference, she goes, oh, my son is on the mission field, and she said, you will learn what he had to learn. She goes, you're going to have to take your church hat off, your pastor hat off, and put your missionary hat on. And I never learned how to do that because it didn't make sense to me, because I'm called to be a minister of the gospel.
Yeah.
That's what God's called me to do. How do I take that off?
Right.
And put something else on?
And what kind of missionaries taking that hat off to do missions?
To do missions. And so it's the same thing here. I understand what they're saying, because this is a life here. You know, this is a living organism, if you will. You know, this church has been birthed, and now it's going to grow, and as even us as children grow, we need different things along the way, and I know the church will need different things along the way, but I don't think we can ever lose that missional mindset.
Yeah.
I think we, for me, I have to keep that missional mindset because that's part of who Christ made me.
One you can live without fulfilling your purpose, but man, what an awful life.
Yeah, exactly.
That's no way to live.
Exactly. And you know that our vision and mission here at the Bridge is that every man, woman, and child, every man, woman, and child would have the opportunity to hear and to respond to the gospel of Jesus Christ from the lips of someone from this church. That somebody in this church that attends here is sharing the gospel out there. And
not that they have to come here to hear it.
They don't have to come here to hear it at all.
Yeah.
They can accept Jesus and they go to another church.
Yeah.
They don't have to come here.
Yeah.
They just need to be obedient to what God calls them to do.
Right.
And God's called me to be a missionary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys got that put right to the test when you moved here too, right?
Yeah.
Your church wasn't even launched yet.
Yeah.
You moved to Florida and immediately a hurricane.
Yes.
Dead eyes for Madison where you just went.
We get here mid-April. And so the first couple of weeks, we're just unpacking boxes, getting settled into the house.
Nothing. Yeah.
We're not doing this. This is exciting. And then once after that first couple of weeks, I'm just in the community.
Yeah.
I'm going to breakfast and I'm going to lunch and I'm spending money I don't have. But I'm building relationships with the people here in the community, and I begin inviting people to join me the first Thursday of June for a small group in our home. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just inviting people. And so that first night we had one couple come, and when they left, I found this out later. The wife looks at her husband and says, "He thinks we're coming back."
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
And we've just grown from that point. And we're not having services. This facility wasn't ready to hold people because it had closed. This church had closed and sat empty for a long time. And so there was a lot of preparation that we had to do. And like you said, the hurricane hit. And we took a direct hit. The eye of the storm came right over top of us. And I'm sitting out on the carport that evening. And I sat on the carport throughout the whole storm. I love storms.
Yeah. It's like redneck entertainment.
It is. It is. Yes. And I saw a lot of videos of trees going down and stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, I pick up the phone and I call the second person that came to our small group and became part of our small group. I called him because one of the things that he does in this community is he cooks. He cooks for people. He does fundraisers for people. He does a lot of fundraising through his barbecue pit. And so I called him. I said, can we start cooking in the morning? I said, we can't sit here and wait for someone to come to us. We need to start serving our community right now. And I said, I've got a couple in the house. The first couple that came that said he thinks we're coming back. They stayed with us through the storm.
Wow.
And I knew how hungry they were to start serving the community. And so the next morning, Timmy shows up with his barbecue pit at 7:00 in the morning. And he said, I'm going to run over here to Clover Farms and see if I can get us some meat. That's a little market just right across the street from us. And about 7:30, he calls me and he goes, can you come help me load the truck? I'm like, how much meat you getting?
Yeah.
And so Yeah, and so I go over there, and we literally mounded his truck with food.
Wow.
And that store provided all the meat that we cooked. We cooked 2 hot meals a day for 6 days, and they provided all of the food for us free of charge.
Wow.
And so that end of that first night of cooking, I got a phone call from the Department of Children and Family. And they said, we understand that you're using your facility as a distribution spot. I'm like, yeah, we're feeding people. And they said, we'd like to partner with you. And I said, I don't know what that looks like, but come on.
Yeah.
Come on. I want to serve my community. I want to show this community some love. They need it. We've had a hard time. So, yes, I will partner with you.
That door wasn't open. It was kicked down.
Yeah. And they showed up that next morning with, I'm going to say 35 volunteers.
Wow.
They showed up with an 18-wheeler full of, literally an 18-wheeler full of food and water and diapers and everything else that you can imagine a person would need after a storm. And they came with every organization that fit underneath their umbrella. We had certified counselors, licensed counselors here on site for 2 full weeks. For 2 full weeks, we are serving this community. Our first thing, we're a community of 4,000 people.
Yeah.
Our first Saturday, we had from about 7:30 in the morning to 2:00 in the afternoon, we had over 800 cars go through our driveway.
Wow.
And so we
Do you think that's probably 1 car per family, basically?
yes,
800 families, give or take.
give or take.
Yeah.
And they're coming through and they're getting everything that they need.
Yeah.
And so at one point, I had 5,000 boxes of 7-day meals sitting on 30 pallets in my front yard. I don't know how many pallets of water. I lost count of how many pallets of water, how many bags of ice, how many diapers. I have no clue how many diapers.
This looked like a FEMA camp
It was like
for a little while.
it did. And what was really funny was in our small group, we were going verse by verse through John. And the last small group that we had before the storm hit, we were where Jesus fed the 5,000.
Hey, you're about to feed 4,000.
And one of the things that we all kept talking about is it keeps multiplying. We're getting, God is just pressing it down, and it's just overflowing with things to bless our community. One day a trailer shows up and they unloaded, I don't know how many tubs of children's clothes that was dropped off here by an organization for us to give out. We gave away children's clothes like crazy. Cleaning supplies. One of the organizations that I partner with through before the storm is Second Harvest of Big Bend. It's our food bank in this area, and they called me one day and they said, Pastor, do you have electricity at your house? No, we don't. The next day they showed up with a generator.
Wow.
No, they said, this is yours. This is for you.
Wow.
And so God's provision just kept coming because of two things. We made ourselves available for God, and we're obedient to what he was calling us to do. Yeah. When it was all said and done, we were tired, exhausted, and I had tons of empty pallets. I didn't know what to do with them. And my wife, she suggested that we use them, do a wall. And I was thinking, I could take some pallets and put them together as a stage decoration from time to time. But we got so many of them. She goes, no. She goes, let's take them apart and actually do an accent wall. And so she's the smart one and the spiritual one. She makes me look good. It's like, come here, honey, make me look good. But
I can confirm.
You can confirm. Yeah,
we did.
Yeah, but the wall in our baptistry.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the wall here.
That's God's provision, because those are the pallets that all of that product came on to serve our community. Yeah, God is good. You just have to be available and obedient and hang on.
Yeah,
because it's going to be all right.
Yeah. It's like that verse, be ready in season and
out of season.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I told the congregation here one day, a couple of Sundays ago, I said, look, here's the thing. I said, when we make ourselves available and when we're obedient to what God's calling us to do, we just have to let go of that lap bar of the roller coaster of life and just hang on and wait for a ride that you will never forget. God has taken us around the world.
Yeah.
He has taken us into the lives of amazing people. And we have built so many deep relationships with people that I may never see again, because I may never go back to that part of the world again. But we stay in touch.
Yeah.
WhatsApp, Facebook. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of, I've heard it said in a way, kind of like with especially the admissions, you get on a plane a lot.
Yep.
And we get on that plane and we don't even know the pilot.
All right.
We just go to our seat and we just trust that he's going to get us there, or her, or whoever.
Right.
And we believe that they're trained and they know where they're going and how to do what they're doing. It's like, how can we put more trust in a pilot that we don't even know?
Right.
Than a God that we love and we say we trust with our future. And like that's always been it's a simple analogy, but to me, especially because I get on a plane a lot, but it's just like, wow, I can't, don't let me trust a pilot more than I trust you, even though I don't see it necessarily. Yeah, I trust you. You know where we're going.
Yeah, the pilot doesn't want to know you.
Yeah,
he may say bye to you as you're getting off the plane.
Yeah,
God wants to know you.
Yeah,
he wants you to know him.
Right.
He wants that relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun ride.
It is. Yep. Yeah. I can testify that it's a fun ride when I go with you.
Yeah. Yeah. We're always, yeah. I will find something to get us into.
No, I'll never forget. I'll never forget the that day that we were moving all of that thatching.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was such a fun day.
There may have been some new dances introduced.
There might have been some video that may or may not be on YouTube.
Yeah, probably YouTube or TikTok or something.
Yeah,
it's out there.
It's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yep. No. Oh, we laughed. That was fun.
I always have fun. It's an adventure, and
that's what God wants of us.
Yeah,
He wants us to have fun.
Yeah,
He wants us to enjoy this life.
Right.
You know, it comes with some bumps and scrapes, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
it's worth it.
And then you get to do it with your friends and
Yep.
make new friends.
and make new friends. Yep.
That's always exciting. Well, I think you got any more stories you want to tell, or
Oh, we could probably sit here all night and tell stories, but yeah, I think it's a good place to
wrap it up?
wrap it up. And
Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast with me, and I'm sure it's just the next story in our line of stories. We'll keep interacting, and you guys are gonna do an amazing job here in Florida, and I'm excited to see how God uses you and your wife and the church.
Yep. We're excited to see what God's going to do in and through this congregation. I love these people that show up here on Sunday morning and on Thursday nights, and yeah, it's going to be a fun journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah. And we'll travel again sometime together because
You got to baptize some people in Asia now, right?
I have to. I would like to be able to baptize in every corner of the earth.
Yeah.
I just think that would be fantastic.
It's gonna be difficult in Antarctica, probably. That's gonna be a cold one.
I only have to get up into my waist.
Yeah. I was on the edge of the ice and just dunk somebody from over here.
Yeah.
Just here, you go down there.
Let me have your hand.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, dip them like a popsicle down there.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
goodness.
But yes, that would just be amazing to be able to go to more places and baptize in more rivers and share the gospel. And I'll share this with you first, but the first time, and I got so many stories. The first time in Africa, we showed the Jesus film, and I got to preach the gospel at the Jesus film, and there was an entire village came out for that, and just to be able to stand before an entire community and share the gospel, is, man,
There's people trying to picture this at home too. Like, you go into a village, there's no electricity, running water, none of that. You're out in the bush.
Yeah.
And you're bringing, a battery-powered projector and a screen.
Yes.
And you're putting that screen on the side of this building. And you have to wait for nightfall.
You have to wait until
It's got
nightfall.
to get dark to use the projector.
Yes.
So you're out in the middle of nowhere waiting for it to get dark. Like, throwing away all your your natural instincts to, like, we should be in a safe place, and
So this time we were out in the soccer field.
Oh, okay.
And we hung the screen at the goal.
Oh, cool.
On the goal. And you're right, there's no lights.
No.
And when they stopped the Jesus film for me to share the gospel, I couldn't see my hand.
Yeah.
It was that dark.
Yeah. And it's such an event for the community too,
Yes.
because it's like bringing a movie theater to a place that doesn't even have electricity.
Exactly.
Like, it's a big deal.
It is a huge deal. And I remember I had my Bible and my cell phone. Somebody on the team came up and stood beside me and held the cell phone over my Bible so that I could read. And then all of the bugs
Oh, right to you.
because what happens when the light comes on in the dark? All the bugs go to the light.
And you're trying to talk. Probably.
Yep. But I don't know. I honestly don't know how many of the people in that village accepted Jesus Christ that night. I know there were a lot.
Yeah.
And that was just, that was just amazing time. And I'm going to share one more with you.
Go for it.
And I was in the Dominican Republic, and I was with a young adult, Jeremy Gackle. Love that man. And we were teamed up together to go, and we were going to walk through this village and prayer walk and share the gospel and have gospel conversations with every single person we could. We had an interpreter with us, and we're walking along, and I saw this rock laying on the ground, and I picked it up, and I said, Jeremy, I think this may come in useful. And he's like, Are you nuts? And I'm like, look at it. I said, you can, depending how you look at it, it's either a V or a Y. And I think we can use this. And I said, I'm going to put it in my pocket. And so we went on, and I know he thought I was, he was probably thinking, oh, this dumb old man, what's he thinking? And so we walk about 100 yards, and there's these two young men underneath a shade tree, and they have a basketball. And I was so glad I had Jeremy with me, because I'm not a sports person. But and so we go over and we start talking to them, and we're just asking them all kinds of questions. You know, are you guys in school? They've already graduated, but they'd like to go to college. What would you like to do? They want to play basketball. They would love to play NBA basketball, you know. And so we're just talking and everything. And there was a point in the conversation where it hit me. I need to pull this rock out of my pocket. And I pulled that rock out of my pocket, and they were just talking about winning a basketball game. And I said, hey guys, what does this look like to you all? What's this rock look like? And they were like, a rock? I said, well, to me, it looks like a V. And they're like, yeah, I can see that. And I said, you know, when you play a basketball game, you want the victory, don't you? And they said, yes, that's why we play. We want to win. We want the victory. And I said, you know, when we get on Team Jesus, when we say yes to Jesus, when we ask him to forgive us of our sins and to come into our lives, we have victory in Jesus. And that's what this rock really reminds me of, is the victory that I have in Jesus. And Jeremy picked up on that. And so he started talking to them and sharing the gospel, and then I would come back in with stuff, and we're just going back and forth with these guys, and I don't know how long we'd been there, but evidently we'd been there all day, because the bus pulled up and they're blowing the horn, come on, and we're like, just a minute, and we're just talking to these guys, and so I finally asked, is there any reason that you would not put your faith in Jesus Christ today? And they thought for a minute, and they're like, no, there's no reason that I would say no to that. And so Jeremy and I got to pray with them and see two more added to the kingdom of God. It's because of a rock.
Yeah. And just seeing the opportunity, like I said, just being open to whatever God puts in your path, literally.
Literally, a rock. I'll show it to you when we go
back
to the house. I have it. Yeah, I kept it.
Good.
Yeah.
And it just, again, that wraps back around to how we started this with your wife on the back of the motorcycle.
There it is.
Yeah.
Let go.
Yeah.
Just let go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks again for joining us on the Mission Field Media Podcast. We so appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen to what God is doing all around the world through all these missionaries and ministries. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and find us on the social media apps and follow us there as well. Tell all your friends about it. We couldn't do any of this without the listeners like yourself and our sponsors. Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you join us again on the Mission Field Media Podcast.